your other point, Chris, you've been doing this since 2012. Thank you. Well done.
You've been doing it since the 80s.
I know a lot of Australians that watch your show. So you're getting cut through, and certainly from my American friends, and you know some of them, what you do is incredible, and we need this kind of voice. We need your voice out there, and I know you probably don't want to hear this, but you know, a lot of people love the humour you bring to such an important topic, and I think that's cool too. Yeah.
Oh, we do actually want to hear that.
I'm just remembering when we were in Australia in 2018, and I spoke at the Australian
Institute.
The Sydney Institute.
The Sydney Institute.
Yes,
that's right. Yeah, that was a very interesting experience where some of the higher ups in that organization were not entirely happy with my message about China, but
in Australia.
Yeah, but everyone in the audience was very, very happy about it. It seemed.
Oh, well done.
Thank you. Well, so another question I have is, China does have still tremendous influence around the world. I think COVID is a great example, like how they spun that to their advantage. And I'm just wondering, China has been pushing this zero COVID policy, and I know Australia has something similar. Do you think there's any kind of sense that the Australian government was inspired by China's zero COVID policy? I don't know if we even want to get into all of this.
Well, I know Matt does. Yeah, look, I think a lot of the world was jibbed, not just by China with regard to the virus, being made and distributed by China, but also looked at the way that they handled it, and they came out and said, well, this is the way we're handling it by locking everything down. And, well, I don't think we welded anybody into their homes like the Chinese did, but I think, a lot of health bureaucrats probably looked at that and said, oh, well, geez, that seems to work there. Lock people up, don't let them go anywhere, and you can't catch the virus, right? And so perhaps that's a massive oversimplification, and I'll get in trouble from the Chief Health Officer of New South Wales and elsewhere. But I don't know. I mean, we'd have to ask them. But, I mean...
Well, what could they do to you? Put you under house arrest?
Yeah, I guess there's not much more they can do to me.
You are talking to us from lockdown.
I am talking to you from lockdown, yes. We have a new Premier of the state of New South Wales, I'm pleased to let you know. So premiers in our states are equivalent to your governors. So our new Premier, who was newly installed as of Monday of this week, is a man named Dominic Perrottet, and he is accelerating the timetable to freedom. So he's a little bit different to his predecessor. He doesn't bring out the Chief Health Officer to provide daily updates. He is accelerating the time frame for children to go back to school and for the society to open up and for Australians to be able to travel overseas, for Australians to be able to come back. So that's good news.
So soon you'll be able to take Kevin Rudd back.
No, thanks, mate.
I mean, Kevin Rudd has had to kind of do a little bit of an about face where I think he's realized, at least in the US, the whole absolutely re-engagement thing is not that's not a message that's politically okay right now. So he's kind of pivoted a little bit to, if we just get rid of Xi Jinping, then, he's the problem.
Oh, he's on that now, is he?
Yeah. That anonymously written, the longer telegram essentially made that argument that the West should try to essentially depose Xi Jinping so the Communist Party can get a more reasonable leader. I think it's an open secret that it was written by Kevin Rudd.
Well,
and then he's come out more recently with some more stuff that's kind of in the, well, no, China's not 100% good, the kind of doing this thing about oh, it's Xi Jinping's fault,
Yeah, so as we talked about before, I think that's dangerous because you're just going to replace Xi Jinping perhaps for a small amount of time with someone who's going to bide their time and then hit us with an even bigger stick. And the other thing, as you probably well know, because Kevin Rudd lives in your state, is that Kevin Rudd says different things to different audiences, that whatever they want to hear. So he'll say things down in Australia that support the Australian Labor Party that says, well, Australia should be re-engaging and have an engagement policy with China. And then he'll say something completely different in the United States.
For the engagement policy people, what is their argument essentially? Like, what kind of China do they see us or Australia engaging with?
Well, they don't see China as a threat. So firstly, they don't talk very much about Hong Kong. They don't talk at all about the Uyghurs. They don't talk about Taiwan. All you have to do is, and don't do this, but Google Paul Keating. Don't do that because we could just forget about him. He's, hopefully a non-entity, although he does have influence within the Australian Labor Party, which is why it concerns me. But so they don't talk about those things. And then they say that China is actually not an expansionary power, that they don't want to control anybody. Okay, I'm sure the Tibetans and the Uyghurs and the Hong Kong and Taiwan would disagree with them.
Or India.
Yeah, and Southern Mongolia. I mean, the list does kind of go on.
Yeah, exactly. But so these are the things that they say. And I don't, it blows the mind, right? Because you are either on the payroll or you are ideologically sympathetic with communism. And you think that would be that being a vassal state. So the other thing that they say is that the United States is spent. You're done. And that China is there's nothing you can do. China is going to win. They're going to be the biggest economy. They're going to be much bigger than you Americans. We don't like Americans in any case. China is in our region. We are a South Asia country. We should be engaged with our region. Bugger the Americans. You're done anyway, and you're not going to come and help us. So we should put our lot in with China. So that makes absolutely no sense, but that's what's behind their thinking.
Well, so this is kind of why I brought up some of the COVID policies, because my concern is that there are plenty of people in government and big businessmen who see the authoritarian control the Chinese Communist Party has over society, and that is appealing to them. They would like to have that kind of power over their countries.
Well, I mean, the state in Australia with the most, I would say, restrictive lockdown policies has been Victoria, and that is run by Premier Daniel Andrews, who is incidentally the premier who sort of independently signed a sort of a Belt and Road Initiative deal with China in this weird way where the federal government was like, you can't do that. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to do it anyway. I mean, what's going on in Victoria?
So Victoria is it's a little bit like California in that it's become almost a one-party state. I think the Liberal Party would love to be able to get back into state government in Victoria, but I'm not sure that they would be that successful. I hope I'm wrong. I'm probably going to get a lot of people from Victoria and the Liberal Party being very angry at me for saying that, but you can see the same thing even in Queensland, which is the state to the north of me, where you've had just consistent Labor governments with perhaps a one-term Liberal government here and there. And this is pretty much the same in Victoria. You've had a lot of Labor governments. And up until just very recently, Premier Daniel Andrews' polling has been good. You get people internal that are saying, well, he'd still be elected. despite, as you point out, Matt, that he unilaterally went out and signed a deal with the Chinese Communists on Belt and Road Initiative, which generally states don't do, because it's signing treaties and doing foreign trade deals is something that the federal government did, but we just didn't have anything on our books, on our legislation that prevented it. This Liberal government has now put something on the books and has cancelled that deal and any other future deal. And in fact, it's retrospective. It can go back and look at any deal that any local state government has made that is not in the interest of Australia, and it can be cancelled by the federal government. So that's good. But yeah, so I think you're right that perhaps there have been some authoritarian sorts of people like Dan Andrews that have looked at what China has done and copied it and done it in Victoria. So Victoria is now the world's most locked down city, or Melbourne, and it's a shame.
Yeah, it's funny you compare it to California, because I always thought of Melbourne as kind of like the San Francisco of Australia. You know, you got the trolleys, and it's like a nice, friendly place. But also like, but Victoria State being like California, with this governor in California, our governor. I used to live in California, but now in New York, their governor was, had faced this recall election for a number of things, including his COVID hypocrisy, including basically keeping kids out of public schools, but then sending his own children to private schools, which were in session, as well as other things. But
French laundry,
the French laundry, which I'm just jealous, because I always wanted to go there. But then he got, he won his recall election. He survived with like 60-something% support, which to me was like mind-boggling, right? That like you look at what he's done, you think, wow, like how do people still support that? And yet they do. So I think it's an apt comparison you made.
Yeah, and that's right. So I spent a lot of time in San Francisco, and I did my undergraduate at University of California.
Go Bears.
Yes, go Bears. Yes.
And you somehow ended up working for the Liberal Party?
Yeah.
San Francisco, Berkeley, and conservative. Okay.
Yeah.
That must have been interesting.
It was interesting. So I was there in the early to mid 90s, and let's just say lucky there were no smartphones around capturing video and stuff when I was there. So I was the crazy Australian tearing stuff up. But so I wouldn't say, and I love San Francisco. It's a beautiful city, and I look at just, even since I left, at just how bad San Francisco has become. It is just disgusting. You've got junkies on the street shooting up. You've got people defecating all over the place in public in front of you. So I wouldn't say Melbourne is as bad as that.
You need to stop slandering my home city, even though I totally agree with you.
Are you from the Bay? You're obviously from the Bay Area.
I'm from San Francisco, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and I did actually briefly go to Berkeley, so we have that in common.
Awesome.
But yeah, no, San Francisco, I go back all the time, and it's as you say. But that's not necessarily COVID related. That's just other factors.
That's other factors, and perhaps when you have a one-party system, they can get away with whatever they like, and perhaps Victoria is becoming, and I hope it doesn't become a one-party state at a state level. I worry that it perhaps is, and then when you have a one-party state, I mean, China's a one-party state.